On April 4, 2006, the silence over the Persian Gulf was broken by a sound that shook the foundations of the modern world. It was not a proxy attack. It was not a localized skirmish. It was a direct symmetric engagement between two of the most powerful and ideological military machines in the Middle East: Israel, an advanced nuclear-armed democracy, and Iran, a revolutionary Islamic theocracy, had finally crossed the invisible decades-old line of direct warfare. In a single 48-hour period, the red lines that had governed regional containment since the 1979 revolution evaporated. Breaking news: explosions in Isfahan. Prime Minister Netanyahu addresses the nation. Oil prices surging. This conflict, immediately christened the 2026 war, was a geopolitical earthquake. It threatened to shatter the global energy supply, force superpowers into direct confrontation, and fundamentally reorder the balance of power in the world's most volatile region. Today, we will conduct a forensic analysis of this pivotal moment. How did the world's finest intelligence agencies miss the warnings? What was the military reality on the ground, in the air, and in the cyber domain? And how has this war forged a new, terrifying strategic reality for the Middle East? This is not just a war story. This is the story of how the future of global power was rewritten. In April 2006, the Middle East changed forever. We all saw the headlines, but what actually happened inside the secure decision rooms of Tel Aviv and Tehran? Was this the inevitable conclusion to a decades-long rivalry, or was it a calculated gamble by a cornered regime? For the first time, we have the forensic data. We have the military assessments, and we have a breakdown of how this direct war, not a proxy battle, shattered the global oil market and forced the United States and Russia into a high-stakes nuclear standoff. Forget everything you think you know about proxy wars and containment. In 2026, the red lines became front lines. This is the analysis of the new strategic reality. To understand 2026, we must understand the precise strategic environment of the years leading up to it. The primary driver of the conflict was not ideology, but time. The 2015 nuclear deal, the JCPOA, had offered a framework of containment, but its slow collapse after the 2018 U.S. withdrawal set Iran on a different trajectory. Post-2018, Iran pursued a policy of strategic patience and then maximum resistance. By 2024, International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) reports were showing that Iran's stockpiles of uranium, enriched to 60% purity, a short technical step from weapons grade, were sufficient for multiple nuclear devices if the political decision to break out was made. This "if" was the central variable. For Israel, this progression was an existential countdown. Its military and intelligence services operated under the Begin Doctrine, the policy that Israel will use preemptive military force to prevent any regional adversary from acquiring weapons of mass destruction. Throughout 2023 and 2024, the invisible war raged in the gray zone. Israeli intelligence conducted targeted assassinations of Iranian nuclear scientists and sabotage operations inside Iranian facilities, including the infamous Stuxnet cyber attacks years prior, and later drone strikes on sensitive sites. Simultaneously, Iran, via the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps (IRGC), expanded its concept of forward defense, embedding advanced missile tech and its Ring of Fire, Hezbollah, Hamas, PMF militias, Houthis, closer to Israel's borders. The threshold for what constituted containment was being refined every single month. By 2025, the gray zone was exhausted. 2005 was defined not by external threats, but by internal instability in both nations. This internal dynamics are critical to our understanding of the decision-making in 2006. In Iran, the aging supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei faced a regime legitimacy crisis. Decades of Western economic sanctions, exacerbated by systemic corruption, had crippled the economy. The revolutionary fervor of 1979 had faded for a young, tech-savvy population that staged increasingly frequent and violent anti-regime protests. The IRGC, therefore, became not just an export engine of revolution, But the internal security guarantor, its dominance was total. A cornered IRGC facing internal collapse is a highly dangerous actor for whom an external conflict can serve as a potent tool of national unity. Across the region, Israel was grappling with its own internal divisions, with a deeply polarized electorate and recurring political instability. The return of Benjamin Netanyahu, leading the most right-wing coalition in Israeli history, solidified a hardline security paradigm. For Netanyahu and his defense ministry, the threat was binary. A nuclear Iran was a threat to the Jewish state's survival, and no other issue, including internal protest or U.S. diplomatic pressure, would supersede it. In summary, by early 2026, both capitals were governed by leadership circles that viewed confrontation not just as a defensive necessity, but potentially as a political imperative. The containment system was brittle. All it needed was a spark. We can now reconstruct the first 48 hours. Intelligence from 22/6 suggests the Mossad received high-fidelity confirmation that the Supreme Leader had signed the final order for nuclear weaponization, the final stage of mating a warhead to a delivery system. For Israel, this was the ultimate red line. Prime Minister Netanyahu convened the security cabinet in a subterranean bunker in Tel Aviv. The decision was not if to strike, but how to strike effectively enough to reset the clock by 5 to 10 years. Israel's response was codenamed Operation Epic Fury. It was the single most complex aerial operation in IDF history. The primary strike package was composed of a squadron of specialized F-35 ADR fighters, supported by E-2 Hawkeye AWACS for command and control, and F-15E Strike Eagles carrying bunker buster munitions. The key variable was the F-35 Stealth and Electronic Warfare EW suite. The mission required the complete neutralization of Iran's sophisticated double-digit Russian-made air defense network, the S-300 and the S-400 systems. Israeli F-35s utilized cyber payloads to hack the integration nodes of the Iranian defense grid, creating ghost targets and blinding key radar batteries before the main kinetic strike package arrived. This was not just SEAD, suppression of enemy air defenses, it was ASEAD, Advanced Cyber-Enabled SEAD. Operation Epic Fury was simultaneous. At T0, dozens of GBU 72 Advanced 5Ka 000 pound bunker busters impacted the primary enrichment halls at Natanz and Fordow. Mossad sabotage units on the ground in Iran confirmed secondary explosions, indicating the physical destruction of centrifuge cascades and uranium stockpiles. Crucially, the target list was not limited to nuclear sites. Epic Fury included a decapitation package, high-precision strikes on IRGC missile command and control centers near Isfahan, and a suspected drone manufacturing hub outside Tehran. Israel had gone for the jugular. It was a massive, humiliating success. For 12 hours in 22/6, Iran demonstrated it had absorbed the lessons of containment. While its air force and air defenses were decimated, its primary deterrent, its immense ballistic missile and drone arsenal, was optimized for resilience. The Supreme National Security Council in Tehran convened. Hardliners in the IRGC argued that a proportional gray zone response was impossible. The regime's survival depended on demonstrating symmetric force. 12 hours after Epic Fury, Iran launched Operation True Promise 2. This was not a localized strike. Over 400 ballistic missiles and 1,000 suicide drones were launched in successive waves toward major Israeli population centers and IDF infrastructure. The strategy was saturation. This was the true strength of Iran's asymmetric model, the coordination of its ring of fire. Simultaneously with the direct Iranian launches, Hezbollah unleashed a relentless volley of 5,000 short-range rockets and precision missiles from southern Lebanon into northern Israel. Houthi forces in Yemen fired long-range ballistic missiles aimed at Israel's southern port of Eilat, and PMF militias in Iraq launched large drone swarms from the east. Iran was not trying to win a traditional war. It was forcing Israel's multi-tiered defense network to its theoretical breaking point. This was the greatest real-world test of missile defense in history. Israel's Arrow 3 system, designed for exo-atmospheric interception, performed brilliantly, engaging the majority of Iran's Shahab 3 and Goddard 110 ballistic missiles before they re-entered the atmosphere. Below them, David's sling effectively countered the medium-range missiles. And in an engineering marvel, Israel's network of integrated radars, working with U.S. Navy destroyers in the eastern Mediterranean, successfully tracked the low-flying Iranian drone swarms. However, Hezbollah's barrage from Lebanon was the critical threat. The quantity of 5,000 rockets in 24 hours created a saturation event. Even the Iron Dome, with its legendary intercept rate, faces a math problem. When launchers are dozens of kilometers away, reaction time is near zero. Iron Dome batteries began to run low on interceptor missiles. Israel faced the nightmare scenario: the choice of what to defend, military assets, critical infrastructure, or civilian centers. Roughly 10% of Iran's advanced missiles and Hezbollah precision weapons penetrated Israel's defenses. Hits were confirmed on the outskirts of Tel Aviv, in Haifa, and significantly, at the IDF-sensitive Nevatim airbase. While the damage to Nevatim was limited by hardened shelters, the psychological impact on the Israeli populace was profound. For the first time since 1948, the Israeli home front was a front line in a symmetric war. The cost of defense was also a tactical variable. It is estimated that Israel spent over $2 billion in interceptor missiles alone in 48 hours, an unsustainable economic drain if the conflict extended. The 2026 war immediately proved it was not localized. The strategic objective for Iran shifted from nuclear preservation to regime survival. To survive, it had to impose a global cost. As Israeli F-35s conducted secondary strikes on IRGC infrastructure, Iran activated its ultimate economic card. The IRGC Navy began a systematic mine-laying operation in the narrow Strait of Hormuz, through which 20 to 30% of the world's total oil consumption passes every day. The impact was catastrophic. Global maritime insurance rates for the Persian Gulf skyrocketed by 5,000%. Effectively halting commercial traffic. Brent crude oil prices doubled in 48 hours, threatening to trigger a global economic depression. Global markets crashed. Supply chains for critical industries, from automotive to consumer electronics, were paralyzed. For Washington, London, and Beijing, the conflict was no longer a Middle Eastern sideshow. It was a direct threat to domestic stability. 2026 was the moment the superpowers had dreaded: direct confrontation. The U.S., bound by security guarantees to Israel, moved a second carrier strike group into the eastern Mediterranean. Washington's message to Tehran was direct. Any attack that resulted in significant Israeli civilian mass casualties would trigger direct U.S. intervention to destroy Iran's remaining kinetic capability. However, this was complicated by Russia. Moscow, now Iran's primary military technological partner after years of strategic convergence, warned that any direct U.S. strike on Iranian territory would be seen as an act of aggression against Russia's own security architecture in the region. China, a major consumer of Iranian and Gulf oil, took a measured but forceful stance demanding immediate de-escalation and safe passage through the strait, utilizing its expanding navy in the Indian Ocean. For the first time since the height of the Cold War, the threat of nuclear escalation by a third-party actor, Israel or Iran, was forcing the primary nuclear powers into a dynamic of managed standoff. How does it end, and where are we now? The 2026 war ended with a fragile ceasefire brokered by a combined US-Chinese diplomatic push, primarily motivated by the need to reopen Hormuz and stabilize the oil market. The conflict didn't have a military winner. Israel achieved its primary tactical goal. Iran's nuclear weaponization clock was reset, perhaps by 5 to 7 years. But this success came at a shattering strategic cost. We are now living in a new strategic reality in the Middle East. It has three core components: the end of gray zones. Direct symmetric warfare between Israel and Iran is now a validated, repeatable strategy. Containment is dead. The Ring of Fire is the front line. Hezbollah, the Houthis, and PMF are no longer proxies. They are direct extensions of Iranian strategic depth. Israel must now factor in a multi-front war as its baseline assumption. The deterrence revolution, the 2026 war, proved that conventional military superiority, like Israel's F-35s, does not deter an adversary optimized for saturation warfare, like Iran's missile/drone swarms. New forms of deterrence, economic and cyber, must now be invented. The events of 2026 did not settle the rivalry. They simply accelerated it. This analysis is just the beginning. The files on 2026 are still being declassified. The question for you is, which of these new realities will define the next decade? To get deeper analyses like this and to never miss our next investigation into global power, you have to subscribe. The world is changing faster than the headlines can keep up. We analyze the change. Join us, links to relevant playlists / other video. Subscribe button,